Good evening and welcome to the Grolier Poetry Bookshop. And thanks to the Grolier Poetry Bookshop and James for hosting this. Has anybody noticed the vitality that has come to this store since James? It's just remarkable. I mean, the readings, the energy, our first reader this evening is Mary Buchinger, who is the author of 7 collections of poetry, including Navigating the Reach, Virology, Clouds, Einfu in Feeling, and Aerialist. She has received poetry awards from the New England Poetry Club and the Virginia Poetry Society, a Norton Island Residency, and over a dozen Pushcart Prize and Best of the Net nominations. Her poetry appears in Agni, On the Seawall, Plume, Seneca Review, South Dakota Review, and many other journals. She teaches at the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences in Boston and serves on the board of the New England Poetry Club. Okay, it's not me. All right, good. Sorry. I was just saying to Mary, I have tried to be articulate in response to this wonderful book. And I'm not sure I can. I mean, if I were to mime it, it would sort of look like. But I think that Mary follows a meandering and narrow path earlier trod by Dickinson, H.D., A.R. Ammons, and Louise Glick. And it brings her close to the essence of things. The 7 meditative sequences that make up the Book of Shores are prayers of a kind, not petitions, but praises and laments, heartfelt questions, and evensong for our darkening time. It is her poetic practice to spin language in the centrifuge of her fierce attention, a process that isolates and questions the meanings as they surface, that identifies and pairs opposing understandings. For example, in the book's second sequence, Island, she writes, "There is always more than you can see. Each something presents another possibility. Lamb in the grass, lamb on the plate." Whether she's walking a rack line or bearing witness to the stories water tells, or examining the skull of a moose, or musing on the inland remnant of an ancient sea, these are deeply philosophical poems. As she pursues her inquiry, she bears down on the language over and over, refusing what might betray the quick with the formulaic. These poems are original in the best sense of the term. They search for origins, as if only those arrangements of words that might lead back to beginnings can be trusted to reveal the essence of things. By giving silence its due, and by restraining all impulses toward rhetoric, Buchinger's poems offer us again and again a blade thin enough to pry open the seams of the familiar and see for ourselves what is suddenly grievous and terrifying, singular, beautiful, mortal, and precious. Please welcome Mary Buchinger.
Wow, Richard, thank you for that. So good to see all of you here. And I'm really grateful. I'm grateful to James, to Bella, who created, designed the posters, Richard for that amazing, thoughtful introduction to my work, to this book. I'm thankful to Martha McCullough for the design of the book, to Eileen Cleary, to Lily Poetry Review. I'm grateful to my husband, Steve Bodwell, and I'm really also grateful to my brother, Steve Buchinger, who painted this watercolor that's on the cover. It's his birthday today. Yeah. Yes, happy birthday. So just really feeling immense gratitude, this community. thank you. So this book is full of geography, both, outside and inside geography. And one thing I'm really interested in is how landforms offer ways of interpreting our experience and our feelings. A shore is a place of arrival and a place of departure. And it's where the solid meets the fluid. It's where, like, the principle you stand on meets the everyday. It's where the day meets the night's dream. And a shore is also where paper meets fire. So this is a book of shores. I'm going to read from 2 of the sequences. There are 7, as Richard mentioned. I'm going to read from Archipelago. Archipelago. Dregs at the bottom of the continent. Crumbs to be swept from the map. An archipelago, a chain of islands, and also what contains them. Tierra del Fuego, land of fire. Sparks flung across the strait. The poet canceled the place where she grew up, where she gave birth to her children and raised them. Sometimes I too feel ready to excise and renew. I bite my nails. I trim the split ends of my hair. I think about the things that will be gone and how they will leave me. The flowers from my friend lean out from a cut glass vase that cuts their stems into diamonds of green. The cat chews on the single stalk of purple buds. When I was a child, one of my chores was to watch over the burn barrel and poke the blaze and help the fire turn the pages of the Sears catalog. Its socks and small houses, and render its complete world of things to flame and ash. I loved to watch the gray elements played by the wind and oxidation twirl up and away, littering the sky, then fall cool into the garden. I recognize my archipelago, the South in pieces, some semblance of what was, pure floating of incorrigible bits, unsumming, a missing of the homeland, that indelible idea. In the small hour of writing at the table in my dining room, my coffee chills and the phone lights up, makes a nudging noise, the smallest ding to let me know it's alive with people and news. Each little question niggles till finally I surrender my pencil, allow myself to be pulled away in relation to another. Neither of us can see who we are addressing, or what light surrounds the other, what soft, insistent jazz or distraction, and the hour parts from itself. The archipelago is the thrift shop of landforms, crowd-funded geography, pocket change, shiny bits strewn about, remnants of a great lecture, of a well-conceived meal, of a lineage. Something built, say a republic, with principles and laws, a constitution, imperfect, but mostly solid. It too can be chipped away, divided. Time is a weather, the good and effort, an active plan and plaster. What I take for granted, that very thing imperiled. The body, for instance, I inhabit daily. It is mostly the same as I remember it from night to morning, again and again. Yet it changes utterly, becomes strange to me, even as it remains familiar. Inside is the undoing. Each piece of the whole having left the original meeting place, unspooled from its beginnings, in the ways allowed it, revealing as it goes what's been fostered, nurtured, neglected. I wake to the history of my body, each day another jotting. What is Cassiopeia but an archipelago of light, lassoed by a name? Then I want to read from another sequence called Inland. In Inland, in the inn of inn, reside the deepest greens, the darkest forest of inside. What's in there, you ask, again and again. Looking for what? Neither of us can decide. Still, you keep rooting around. If not sure, that edge of heaving and new, with stakes of herons stately in ebb tide, lively spinning of minnow, the not rot of borderland, where rushes of marsh merge, submerge, pocked greens come and go. Oh, watery depth, the sucking mud. Then inland in amber, what isn't and wasn't and won't. Threshold, foothold, toe, finger, choke, hold. Even inland was once a sea, a shallow sea that turned the living to limestone, an ankle-deep sea of economy, a shiny, miry mirror of sun. But what's inside, you ask? Which catalog shall I reach for? The living or the dead? There are twisted things, chain coral and pincushion and Petoskey, imprints and exprints. There is what was left when the sun was overhead, the smallest of shadows that grew and grew. And there once was a self, known only to self, who carried the sea wherever she went, skirt of water, piney shawl. She loved the creatures dead in their shells. She plucked and pickled them, broke and built with them, paneled her house with the dead white of the shells. How are you dead? I ask, when it's quiet and I've forgotten where I am. The shoreless interior, an airless place of no coming, no going, a skiffless wilderness, stillborn moon, vast unknown, incubator of storm and misdirection. And here you are, requesting a map, texture, you call it. The ups and downs of topography, squirrely lines tell the relief. In truth, what you seek are sinkholes and swamps, the river that runs through. Grab your fishing pole, let out some line, fletch your arrow, string your bow. But the wild you seek is not what lives in inland. The prairie long ago walled, the sky contrailed, a belt of rust and belly of stars. In inland, you can believe there's no shore, that you see what there is and there is no more. The carnival outside, the unreal that reeled beyond, is an unknowable other, a deathbed, a poem. Inland, everyone is aghast. I mean, a guest. Can I live there too? You ask. Not even I do, I answer. It's tundra, it's barrens, flatlands, flatline, fill and flip with windmills and ghosts. Tillable soil, striped by clay-piped ditches, browed with brown cattails and bruises of lupin. How I loved the wild asparagus, tiger lilies, black-eyed Susans by the culvert. Its tiny saltless sea, brimming with snails and stone teeth. Burn what's dead in spring, so greenness can come in. The new is always a chore. Inland's a reedy pond, hand dug and hand sown. Its catfish drowning, its color drains, the fabric thins. You can drive there, I say, meaning I could. I can point my nose anywhere inland and go. The cars rise from their haunches to daily exhaust and foul the roads. And the roads themselves are arrow straight stays in the corset of inland, with its stricture of county and seat full of judges beside the white Corinthian columns, all borrowed, except the geography and history of the used-to-be sea. Inland, prisons abound. All around it is everything that's real and alive: climate and industry, culture and philosophy, every letter ever sown and thought that could be known. The weight of what surrounds it grows. How much can it bear? Inland is everybody the same everywhere? Euchre and recipes. Would you bake me a cake? You ask. I would darn your socks and cut your hair. We would ferment there, be each other's well-aged wine. It's enough, you venture. No, it's a god-awful bore. Throw off the covers, get out of bed. Inland, I am, wherever we are. See, we're almost there. You know, we're always talking about more than one thing, I say. Yeah, I know, you say. Wait, what are they? I mean, what's the other one? Inland, we make trinkets for tourists to buy. They want to show they have visited. They want to believe they've been here. Nest algae. No, nostalgia. Inside inland, it's wild and desolate as the open sea, an unmet shore of roving grief, monstrous with fossils and cicadas. Inland is slow and stormy, undefended, uncountried, filled with the sadness of the unaffiliated. Such is the learning that happens in the absence of question. The walk of the sleepers whose feet meet no tension of ground. Oh, how it echoes. But seriously, what's in there? You ask. You want me to tell you a story of inland? It happened one morning at the edge of the neighbor's hayfield. An eagle leapt from the top of a dying pine, whipped out wings the span of a tractor, a baler, a rake, and swooped down to a bed of fawns, snatching one up in its yellow talons. The doe bellowed and bawled, drove her hooves into the eagle's load. What else could she do? The eagle struggled to rise with its speckled breakfast, but the doe would not relent. She won the body back, and it lay, is there still, bleeding into the field. Okay.
So you see what I mean? Um, our next reader is the inimitable Eileen Cleary. Eileen Cleary is the author of 2 a.m. with Keats and Child Ward of the Commonwealth, which received an honorable mention for the Sheila Margaret Motton Book Prize. She co-edited the anthology Voices Amidst the Virus, which was the featured text at the 2021 MSU Filmetry Festival. Cleary founded and edits the Lily Poetry Review and Lily Poetry Review books and curates the Lily Poetry Salon. A multi-Pushcart nominee, her work is widely published in journals and anthologies. In part 1 of this new book, Wild Pack of the Living, through the story of the abducted 7-year-old Stephen Stainer, who after many years escaped his captor, Cleary gives voice in poems of fierce empathy to the complicated impact of childhood suffering and confusion, both Stephen's and her own. I was reminded of a line by the Salvadoran poet Mario Noel Rodriguez. Childhood is the one great country. I don't believe he meant anything sentimental by that. I read it to mean that grown, we all remain connected in a kind of diaspora. Remaining mindful of that fact would take us a long way toward peace. The empathy evinced by these poems is simply astonishing. Cleary's poems speak in what the poet Jack Gilbert called the forgotten dialect of the heart. But empathy of this spiritual magnitude, unguarded and unrestrained, also has the power to obliterate the self entirely. It's a trick, she writes, to fly over ice, hearing what groans and creaks beneath. So, by all means, buy a copy of Wild Pack of the Living tonight. Have Eileen sign it and take it home. But be careful. If you open this book, it will open you.
One way back in. Hello. It's good to see everyone. Thank you so much, James and Bella. Thank you, Richard, for that introduction. Thank you, Mary, for inviting me to read with you and for your beautiful, beautiful work. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. James, for fixing the room. So in the beginning of this book, Wild Pack of the Living, I talk about how when I was a teenager, the young boy, Stephen Stainer, returned himself home after 7 years of having been abducted. And basically gone missing 7 years. And to me, Stephen was a hero, because I had been seized from my home as a child in what I consider a state-sanctioned abduction. And so our stories are not the same, but they are emotional cousins. And I carried him in my chest for 40 years, which is why I had to write this book. Even though so many people asked me, why do you have to write this book? And an answer to that is, if Stevie were never taken, I'd stop seeing the parkway where red ball gas persists long after it closed for business. The service clerk sponging the windshield, dusty as a country road, could finally retire. If I recognized Stevie sluggish in the back seat, I'd see where the sedan's spectacled driver nearly hailless, hyperglycemic, haphazardly eluding capture must be fleeing, and I'd pursue him. learning by heart his license plate and face the hard years of his years, his wintering. I'd rid his Buick's trunk of its church flyers with fake monks, shred the ruse he printed to appeal to the gullible and plain old religious, everyone with a young son. I'd gag as give to the poor Mrs. Jones and Mr. Bean. He's out of Grimm's with sleeping pills spilled in the console, coursing through Yosemite. If he leaves no tracks on the packed ground of Tioga Pass, who can follow where he crossed into the camp? I can't think, because of the cabin I'd be forced to tour. I might have to touch, not a monster per se, more like eyes torching dry leaves in fire season. Beyond the tire swing, boy boats. Amongst tossed bottles, plastic bags, cans rusted, and a sparrow dead. This hill shoulders the sky. If a child doodled these clouds, he wouldn't call them swollen. To cry while squirrels crook the trees would be absurd. Cruel, my heart reminds me that once a boy was stolen from his home and that no one could find him. It whispers, you were taken too. Or is the word taken too strong? I was removed. Let me say this. After this happened, the rain on a leaf no longer belonged to either of us. Very cheerful book. And this is, so Stephen's parents were Kay and Dell Stainer. Kay and Dell the morning after. What it was like to morning into the valley of forget-me-not, not waking from sleep so much as into a chasm, the hours weathering clefts in their spleens, streams carving them wide, their boy calling along the trailhead, muffled, distant, through packed shovels of doubt. For a brief time, any wind could have been him rising from his bunk into rockfall, with no ladder from which to return, the eggs uncracked on the counter, coffee gone cold. The sun god in Apollo. So this all happened around this time. The sun god and Apollo, NASA's J crew, heard night after day and each afternoon that he still wasn't home from school. They almost spied him at a greasy spoon and knew before Bear Creek was dragged that Stevie hadn't sank. God planted a man inside every boy so he might reach his height. If Stevie were with them, he would jump higher, throw a ball 6 times farther. Is he buried in the peach fields? He could be among the blossoms. Call him. He might lie among the plums, the almonds, or the dunes. If he were with Cernan, Schmidt, and Evans, he'd trail a pathfinder, rejoin Merced's atmosphere, land safely from the moon. Our hero would be home. The internet, good. That might spill, but this is the interstate spills. As Stevie's captor sets up shop to sell Bibles or broken TVs, his real dad stops fishing at the lake and camping with his friends near Bear Creek Bay. The target moves whenever a lawful neighbor smokes out Kenneth Eugene Parnell. Who can say what a boy hides between stones in his pockets? The barred owl's baritone gives way to the tiny engine of morning cicadas and Dell's village of grieving. waking his rooms truer than steamed coffee, filtering the black and white photograph of his boy in Wranglers and cowboy boots outside Charles Wright Elementary. Door of an ear against a cool sheet. There might as well be asters in his feet. How long? What is soon but a country with open borders, impossible to know who will pass through or when. For now, a cardinal trills, life, life. Soon the wind through honeysuckle, hornets shying outside their paper nests, next to a ladder set out since yesterday's rain. Abducted boy returns home after 7 years, New York Times, March 4th, 1980. He couldn't have known how much his parents would shrink inside their pea green frame house, or that his once small siblings would outsize their twin mattresses, or that his first collie would be fenced only in before's invisible lawn. Now he can only speak of cows and pigs, the farm they still owned before he went missing. During's verboten. Sometimes, if he recalls during, his brain projects that scene on the screen of his sweatshirt pulled over his eyes so that his parents can't see that he did smile in those lost centuries. His memory shows him smoking with friends in the woods or rafting on a lake between two cliffs. If he claps his hands, he can measure the distance between boy then and boy now. Never enough hands to cover his mouth, he dares to share anything blue. Blue geraniums outside a busted trailer, blue lupines, blue flax, or blue panic attacks. Sometimes the night is blue-black, and his mind maps the migration of one wail no one else can hear. Meanwhile, cicadas broadcast their secrets. They timbre their miniature drums, spreading their news instead of hiding in their rooms or staying out late after school. All right. Closure. Say the child returns 7 years older. Freckles gone, same child, same chromosomes, but he's outgrown his pants, his plastic comb. He smiles politely and is otherwise withdrawn. The child who vanished curbside, he's vigilant, wary, fire-eyed, or shall we say, shark-eyed, fishing, even in sleep. Dear little boy Joe, dear wrecked one, dear body of evidence, we are scrubbed at the table for your christening. The salmon patch your mother called an angel kiss blooms on the bridge of your nose. Meanwhile, we drill any clue from you, extract a missing tooth until your name escapes. In truth, we surmise, we theorize, and if the dead room answers, is it okay that we never asked what you thought? All this so your captor would be caught. Dear, we ask if we could skip this last bit and promise to tell no one. Would you rather we return you to your bed of blue chiffon and snowberries, that we kept your body from the strange and wild path of the living? All righty. I think I'll move away from Stephen. And, you know, I was talking to Denise Bergman the other day, and we were talking about how she writes very dark books of poetry, and coincidentally, so do I. And how we had a laughing fit because we were talking about like, well, how did you lighten it up at all, Eileen? And I said, well, I did put a coda of hospice poems at the end of it. But anyway, Here are some of those. But first there's no length, there's no dark length, which we will not go to, right? But this poem is for my brother Johnny at 61, after Dorian locks. A quick sign of the cross for the boy in the cowboy hat, dimpled and smiling, as if this blessing could mean a pulsing rope never squeezed his neck for too many newborn minutes, as if he might not jump off the roof once he's no longer content to belt out Delta Dawn or What's Going On with a transistor radio in his lap long after the 9-volt dies. As if the staff at yet another group home would never lecture that Johnny is a man, and because he is a man, we no longer can bring him plastic replicas of Barney Rubble munching cocoa pebbles from a clay bowl, even though we know Barney is a noble-hearted man who loves his feral boy. Though that boy misuses his strength, though others might leave him to be raised by wild mastodons. Well, I've been a hospice nurse. I was an ICU nurse for a very long time. And then I ran lots of medical programs, too many to mention. And then became a hospice nurse. And I've been a hospice nurse now for quite a while. And I carry my patients with me, as you might imagine. And so all of these are written for them. So I'm going to read a few hospice poems just to cheer everyone up before we go. So, in which I explain the signs of dying. If instead he perches on his bed while his grandson bolts through the room toting a Mo Willems book and duck, if chickadees seat or an owl speaks, if pine warblers blur, if he won't stir to watch the bird bath from the corner nook, if whippoorwill and still. When it rains and petrichor doesn't lure him to the pitch pines, if full count and the ninth and the Red Sox need a hit, if he lists, if he squints, before you lean in and whisper, let go, he'll send signals, you'll know. Death pronouncement, the sculptor. The pinched hour unfastens its grip. Wild fingers press into sedges and soft rush. Oh, see her. Not in this bedroom, too bright, her body too like itself to be denied, but as a firefly across the lawn. Follow, so long, to the invisible side of this lake. Pack up her wires, her brushes, set loose her tools. Daylilies escort her to a trail already smoothed. Self-portrait of a hospice nurse on the road with fallen pole. And down wires trap me. Houses where no one can see through the hazy air polluted with ghosts and piped with grief. Those twin pixies out to ruin what's left of peaceful nights. Not snow, but angels in pairs dust the air until they crowd family conversations with God. I haven't had time to let go of the last visit. Find myself trying to move a live wire, boots iced, the patient's neighbor taking my hand. I waited for you. Who am I? Hunted, a hare shot by a fear I can't outrun. It's a trick to fly over ice, hearing what groans and cracks beneath. And I think the dead. Just in case you don't know any dead people that you talk to on a regular basis, I can tell you a little bit about the dead. They stare through bedroom windows, shortness of breath, a cough, no longer mattering so much. I hardly know what to say. They can say everything with a straight face. Listening, listening, It's already been said. Hard for them to get used to things like sleep being gone while we adjust the lights. I'm going to close, I think, with a poem called Weather Report. And again, I just wanted to thank all of you for being here and tell you how beautiful it is to see your faces, and thanks for anyone who tuned in at home. And what a privilege and a pleasure it was to be with Mary and to have Richard introduce us. And thanks again, James. Weather report. Soon, April. And those of us who'd frozen our fingers closed pinning children's outfits into brightly colored popsicles, or who'd shoveled dirty snow just before the town's plow pushed the icy streets onto our driveways, or who'd spilt the golden retriever's ashes, we'd agreed none of us would scatter until spring, when all of us could gather. Blink away lopsided snowmen blinded by hungry deer. We notice as the neighbors drag away electric does who've shone through our windows for so long that our rescue puppy no longer interrogates them. We cannot help but recall our parents' tree, its poison tinsel, or the year Sheba swallowed it while large with litter. Or was that the year she'd widened but didn't whelp? The year she'd collected and mothered the ornaments? The year she would not let any of us near the torn rabbit? Anyway, their deer had stood since before the couple left to have their daughter, and long after the morning they returned without her. But let's not fret about Christmas decorations from our past, or those strewn on our neighbors' lawns. Mud season arrives despite the stillborn, the earth rolling over as predicted. If we live long enough, we pause when the ground softens, the wood pile dampens, or a sparrow's song is close enough to touch. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Let's give the poets another round of applause. We have some books for sale. The poets will be signing books. Thank you all again for coming. Everyone could please move your chairs up against one of the walls. I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautiful. Beautiful. Really beautiful. Wow.
Thank you so much.
Oh, that's a bad feeling.